Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
It's Tuesday. No Leaf game again.
What's going on?
Aren't they supposed to play every other night for us?
They had a nice rhythm going, and now it's all messed up.
Nick Kypreos, Justin Bourne, Derek Brandeo, Jen Rolnick, Sammy McKee, all with you for the next 2 hours as we tee up Toronto Maple Leaf news.
Nothing. We tee up nothing.
We got breaking news on a call-up.
We do. That's a big story today.
I got to admit, I needed to Google the name.
Well, I'm here to I can fill you in a little bit. Tell me when you're ready for that chat.
I'm good to go. Just a quick note that we got Mike Kelly in this hour. In the first 20 minutes, we'll get to him. Ken Wiebe, of course, Sportsnet contributor based in Winnipeg. We have not given the Jets enough love.
It's time.
We go Leafs. We talk McDavid. We talk Bo Horvat in Vancouver. Nothing
Canadians
on Winnipeg.
don't exist. Neither does Ottawa.
Those days are over.
It's the Jets' time.
Do
we talk about the number one team in Canada out west or number two? Which one is it, JB?
Well, I mean, the Jets?
Yeah.
Jets are number one.
Okay.
That's it. So let's chat them up. What do you on about?
Sammy, number one or two?
They're the number two team. I want to give a quick PSA. I know there's lots of men and women that listen to the show that probably play organized hockey of all kinds. They play shinny, beer league, whatever kind of hockey you play. Last night, my buddy Dave was wearing a visor. He took a really vicious high stick straight in the jibs, knocked out his two front teeth, cut his lip wide open. He went in to get zips today on his lip, had to get caps on his teeth.
Yeah.
Bloody mess all over the ice. It's no fun. Put on a cage. You don't look
Cage
like
PSA from Real Kyper and Bourne show.
You think you look cool wearing your visor out there, and you think you're looking like you're in the NHL. Just put on a bird cage, and it's all avoidable. It's my quick PSA to everybody who's listening to this show. It's terrible. It's a terrible scene.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
You wear a cage? I can't see you wearing a cage.
So you go nothing,
No,
or you go vise?
I wear a visor.
Oh, come on, Kip. Just put on a cage. You got a beautiful face, buddy. You do radio every week with TV, and
I'm not against what you're saying. The question is, do I have enough gumption to actually go do it?
I know. So
I'm a busy guy. And when I'm not busy, I like to just rest.
You can't go to the mall
window
for
to
2
put
minutes?
a cage on.
No.
Oh, my God.
So I'm playing college hockey. It's like my second year, and you got the cage on. You come back in the summer and you play with the pro guys. It's not cool to wear a cage, so I take my cage off. Playing with no cage at all. My mom finds out I'm cageless, and she goes, "Here is $80. Go buy one of those nice visors. Put it on. At least wear a visor in the summer." I take my mom's money and I go buy a really nice basketball. Like it was really good. That same day that I bought the basketball and playing 3-on-3, your maybe old teammate Mike Ridley is on the ice with me, and I pass him the puck. He's in front of the net. One times it right back in my schnoz. Broken nose, 20 zips. Karma.
Ouch.
Wear a visor. I'm going to a visor. Wear a cage. I'm going to a
Connor
cage.
Bedard did all of that
Fishbowl.
with a fishbowl
I could never
mask.
do it. I could never do
You can't
fishbowl.
feel the wind in your face.
He
It's terrible.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was mandated to wear the full visor because he's considered an underage in the tournament.
Yes.
Still?
Yes, because
But-
Sid had to do it too.
But he could go back to junior, score 4 goals the next game with a half visor.
Right.
Mhm.
The IIHF is a little tighter, a little more protective of the
I do
the humans.
sympathize with the cool kids remaining to be cool.
For sure.
I get
For
that
sure.
feeling.
All the guys in the parking lot after the game, they're all in their feelings. They're like, boys, next week I'm putting on a cage. That was gross. I don't want to see that again.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's just I wanted to bring
What
that
do you
up.
think that's the sticker price on your buddy's face
That's
with a dentist with no insurance?
Well, no, not to give
I
a
don't know,
shout out
maybe
to the league, but the part of your league fees is you get some you get a rebate. You get some money for.
Sammy
on
said you
ice.
get like $1,500 or something on the league. I was like,
They're
1,500.
giving you
That's
free coffee in the waiting room. That's what you're getting with that rebate.
Better
What
than-
are you,
better-
that's
better
off the back of a match book.
Better than a kick in the pants of the frozen boot. I would
Yeah.
say.
Go get some root canals. Go get a couple of caps.
You know,
You're in 10 grand.
my dad recently got some work done, some long-awaited work from his years in the NHL, and the NHLPA was kind enough to cover it. His total cost of dental work was $30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see.
A couple of front teeth, you're okay.
A
Throw a couple of
really-
crowns on, he's probably $2,000 or something total. But
It's a really nice used car. That's what it is.
You could buy out the lease on my Toyota with that for sure.
Yeah.
All right. The Leafs announced TJ Brodie is on injured reserve. Are we surprised with what has been going on with that blue line all season long?
Yeah. You know, I was saying to Sammy, the reason the Brodie one hurts, though, is because he's not one guy. He's two guys, because he makes whoever he plays with a better defenseman. So you don't just lose Brodie, you lose what he does for Justin Hall or for Morgan Riley or whoever. So that's a big absence for them.
Do we have a sense of like how long this is going to be? Do we have
We got a Kyper's Clipper.
we got
I'm gonna talk
our
about it.
first Clippers Clippers
Kippers coming up.
Clippers, yeah.
Sheldon Keefe on TJ Brodie.
Yeah, like I had alluded to, has been playing through something, and he got a few extra tests done yesterday, and it's something that's just going to require a little bit of time to settle. So I think rather than him continuing to play through that, we're just going to get him on the IR and give him some time to recover.
Do you have an idea on the length of time?
Nothing too long.
Okay. Nothing too long. So ribs, not the same as the oblique injury from before,
Yeah.
but that's a pretty similar area. Not sure if you're familiar with the anatomy of your ribular region.
I'm going to throw something out, and you tell me if this ever crossed your mind. And I just think about like the TJ Brodie, and I'm like, okay, they're kind of settled in. Morgan's back, and now he just disappears, and it's an injury that is really conducive with somebody maybe looking at the Leafs going, I'm taking free shots at all these guys. I'm like, that's an injury where it's you're going after this defense that isn't big.
Mm-hmm.
They're not strong. They're not mean. Why wouldn't I want to just go run the crap out of TJ Brodie and yeah, to the point where I can knock him out with maybe some sore ribs?
I think that's possible because I don't see anyone to prevent that for sure. But I also don't see that has been happening necessarily. Like I can't recall incidences where I'm like, God.
Oh, I saw last week Giordano get absolutely pasted.
Yeah.
And I think in the back half that if it might get worse.
Mm-hmm.
It might get worse if they just start looking at this lineup and say, who's going to say anything to me? Who's going to challenge me? Who's going to come back and tell me, hey, you just don't get free shots on these guys?
Yeah, I do.
That's the only thing I would worry about in the back half.
You know, I worry about that in big games, big situations, playoff series for sure. I feel like everyone is a little less motivated to take it to someone physically in some of these games. But I mean, who knows?
I don't know.
To me, with Brodie, it's a concerning trend because he is incredibly, like Bourne was saying, he's basically two guys. Like whoever he plays with is better than himself. I hope, because he's been pretty healthy his whole career. He's played a lot of games. Like he hasn't missed a lot of time. I just hope this isn't the sort of aging curve and he's going to be the type of guy that's in and out of the lineup because they can't afford to have him not be at his best heading into the playoffs.
Can't afford any of the $5+ million players disappearing out of the blue.
But I would say of all the defensemen who are most important to the team, I'd put him at the top of the list, wouldn't you?
I think
you say
number
he's
one.
the most important guy?
I think going into a playoff series, if you have to be without Morgan Riley or TJ Brodie, you got a really tough decision on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree on that one. Morgan's going to hopefully find his high level here.
We know his good he has a higher ceiling than any of the other D, Brodie included. His good is something other people can't do.
But right now, Brodie is as important as anyone back there. You are absolutely right.
Yeah. So hopefully it's not like the oblique thing where it kind of lingered and took longer than they thought and he gets back in soon enough. But at least Connor Timmins is back in. He gets some run now with the Leafs. It's good.
I think this is where it's nice to have the depth and of your decor. You lose a guy and you can put in another guy that's shown to be really capable, especially offensively.
I also wonder if Ben doesn't get back in soon just because it's been a while and he's been nothing but great in his times in.
He's one guy that the opposition wouldn't necessarily look at and go, I want to take a healthy run at Jordy Ben.
Yeah.
That's, I think.
I might put him in tomorrow night.
I think that would help right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and given what he has brought when they have asked him to play, really hard to say, hey, Timmins is going to be the guy who plays and plays and plays. Obviously, you want Timmins to get on a roll, but you need you need Ben to be able to play come playoffs and feel like he's had a season and some stretch of play at some point.
I just think what he represents is something that is important until you can address it closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see it. Speaking of injuries,
what's going on with Matthews?
Well, that's a great question. Maintenance day, but we don't have a real specific answer. He didn't practice with the team today. Why don't we listen to Sheldon?
Are you reading between the lines on Sheldon and what we're about to hear?
Yeah, I don't think Matthews is going to play tomorrow. Let's listen.
Let's get that sense maybe.
Yeah, just a maintenance day for him. We'll see where he's at going into tomorrow, but nothing we're too concerned about at this point.
But there is some concern that he might miss tomorrow's game?
We'll see where he's at tomorrow.
I don't know. He just didn't want to say that he's not going to miss the game. They got 2 in a row, right? It's Wednesday and Thursday this week. It almost feels like to me, sometimes at this point of the season, it's good for the team to get someone in who hasn't been in and get a little bit of excitement. And I don't know, Matthews another day.
For the last week and a half, including my the article that I wrote last week, to me, it's about managing the next 41 games, knowing that you're kind of locked into this position, right? It does give you the flexibility to allow TJ Brodie, whatever he's going through, maybe an extra week. I mean, if we're in a game 7 situation, maybe even TJ Brodie plays.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I totally think so.
And Austin Matthews now, like you're facing Tampa Bay. You know that.
Yeah.
And
do you?
And the team should be strong enough where you should not be in any risk of, I shouldn't say this, but you're hoping that home ice advantage still matters to you, and you should finish ahead of Tampa Bay.
Yep.
So
they got a pretty healthy lead, albeit Tampa has games in hand. But
so
currently up 8 points.
If Austin needs a day off, give him a day off.
Yeah.
Get 40, 42 goals, 47 goals. Does it really matter?
Yeah, and you want to win these games, but it's not like they're playing Murderers Row this week or anything. I think it's an okay game to let him take a knee for a moment and see what he can do. Bring in Bobby McMahon, the great Bobby McMahon.
I had to Google him. You know what? All I cared about?
Tell me.
6'2".
6'2", 210.
Good enough. Good enough.
Did you ever play, and I know you did, you played with some guys who were freakishly ripped, just absolutely cut out of.
Yeah.
That's Bobby McMahon. He's that. Colin Greening was that for the Leafs for a little bit. And when I was at the Marlies, he was there. He's another guy like that.
And you like a milk bottle?
Oh,
cut like a milk bottle?
Like a bag of milk? Yeah, that's me. It sounds like skates the puck pretty well, shoots it really well, which is good. Don't know that he's maybe the best defensive center on the team. He's not going to be Pontus Holmberg necessarily, but he plays special teams in the American League. Pretty good guy in the middle, it sounds like. Sounds like a guy that everyone really likes, wants to have success. Obviously didn't quite have the start to the year that they had hoped for him, but a guy that they had hopes for nonetheless, even as a bit of an older guy. Do you want to listen to Sheldon on him?
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's do Sheldon on him.
Well, the first thing is that he's a player that we really like. He was signed. I don't know what it was, the end of last season or off season or whatever it was, but a guy that we were really excited about coming into camp and really wanting to see him compete for a spot. I don't think he had as good a camp as we were hoping for, or maybe that he was hoping for even, which maybe showed the fact that despite he's an older player, that was his first NHL camp with us. He wasn't in camp the year before, and had a great season with the Marlies, and had the injury early season this year, and then since he's come back, it just seems like he's hit the ground running and has really found his game. Obviously, Player of the Week coming off a huge week, so the fact that we had a roster spot to be able to call someone up, it just made a lot of sense. Well, he's got that positive momentum there to bring him back and get him in our mix.
Really strong and fast in a straight line. So not like a dipsy doodler. Do you like that? Strong, fast, straight line, big.
Yeah.
His last 5 games, we got 2 goals, no goals, 1 goal, 1 goal, 1 goal. He's shooting it in the net for them.
26 years old. Never played in the NHL before.
Right.
20 years ago, this would have been unheard of. You know that, right? Once they
still super rare.
You haven't played a game. No one's ever looked at you, taken you seriously. At his age, a while ago, you would have just been like, not a chance he'll ever see the light of day. But salary cap era, and looking at guys in a moment kind of frame, instead of big picture, allows guys now to have a taste like this, which is nice. I wonder
do you think that part of this is just a reward for the player? He's been a good soldier. He's been good for the Marlies.
I don't know. I think there's still too many people that are selfish enough to say, if he can't help us, then I don't care about that.
Yeah.
If I don't believe that he is the best choice in this particular moment, what do I care if I make a guy feel good or not if he doesn't help me win?
Yeah. I know sometimes those guys in the minors, they're like, he's not going to play for us. So let's throw him a cookie, keep him happy, keep him,
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think the guy's going to play for the Leafs in the playoffs this year or anything, but, he's...
I don't know. This is a crazy game now, man. And I put nothing
Pontus
past.
shocked us.
I put nothing past.
Doesn't he kind of look like off-brand Morgan Riley? Look at the picture. Kind of look like discount store Morgan Riley. Does it look? Now you see it a bit? Okay.
His feathers. Morgan's got better feathers than that guy. No?
I think it's nice that they can just mix that they, there's a long time where they never really use guys from the Marlies. And like before this sort of era of Leafs hockey where it wasn't used like the way it is now.
Yeah.
And it just, they always remember when Shanahan took over and talking about using it like Grand Rapids with Detroit and how they had so much success doing this. It really does feel like it, if you're down there and you're playing well, I think the incentive is really there for those guys that you're going to get a shot to get in and play with the Leafs. Don't you think?
Yeah, but the system is really supposed to be that you are producing blue chip great guys.
Yep.
I look at this Marley team, and for the most part, the Bobby McMahons, these guys are like seat fillers, right? At the Academy Awards. They can come in, make you kind of look like you're okay, but are they difference makers? Can they come up and make a difference and then shut the door?
That to me is a criticism of the draft. They're not having high-end draft picks more than the Marlies themselves. Because a lot of these guys, what was McMahon drafted?
Wasn't drafted.
Yeah. So it's like they're making chicken salad in some cases, not to be whatever.
You want the system to work like Tampa Bay before they became the real Tampa Bay Lightning. Remember with was it Palat?
Palat, Killorn, Gord,
Tyler
Johnson. And then they come up. Now, the Leafs had a little bit of that with Willie for half a season with the Marlies.
Connor Brown, Zach Hyman, right?
Yeah, Connor Brown, Kapanen, Hyman.
Right, and are there any Connor Browns or Zach Hymans on the Marlies right now where you can go, okay, they're just putting in their seasoning and they're cooking by next year, that they're going to be everyday NHL players?
I don't think so. It's probably where Nick Robertson should be playing, but we shall see where he ends up.
Steve's.
Mm-hmm.
Would he not be a little pissed off seeing McMahon up before him now? He had a taste, didn't he?
Yeah, Steve's. They got a couple of guys who've seen little bits. Dargan Chinsev was up for a little bit. Abruzzese was up last year. At the end of last year, they tried to make him a guy, right? Joey Anderson has been, I think, good when he's played for the Marlies. What interests me is Adam Gaudette. Adam Gaudette was a
15
guy,
goals.
15 goals in 24 games. He was a guy they thought at the start of the year would be a player for them.
There's another one that's probably really pissed off today.
You know what I'm curious about too is so he's got 15 goals in 25 games. He's 6'1", 195 and a left winger. Like it is curious that he hasn't gotten a shot. Obviously, it speaks to how highly they think of McMahon more than anything. But you'd think he'd get a look at some point. But that's what 27, something like that. So they got guys that can come, as you mentioned, be seat fillers. Just knowing, that's going to come and move the needle in a big way.
All right, we mentioned Willie Nylander's rise out of the Marlies to the Leafs to star.
Superstar.
Superstar?
No. Star.
Yes.
Stars, there's like, how many superstars are in the league? 15?
I don't know.
10?
That's a really good question.
To me, if you're at 15, it's not a super level. It's got to be the top 10 guys are superstars.
How many guys in the league?
700.
All right, we're going to go through all of them right now.
Starting at Anthony Aardvark.
Honestly, I want to go through a little bit of this star or superstar.
Okay.
With the three of us. We won't do it now because we're moving along.
One?
We've got, I think Mike Kelly's going to join us. If I'm not mistaken, Sammy's disappeared to go find him.
Just calling him now.
I want to go through some names that are on a borderline here.
Mika Zibanejad.
You're
the good one, right?
We're not ready to go just yet.
One.
But that's an interesting name.
Yeah.
Willie Nylander is an interesting name.
Sebastian Aho.
That you would go star or superstar. First of all, before we do that, and before we get to Mike Kelly, I mean, you got to think about how you define between star and superstar. All right, enough of that. Let's go to hockey analytics specialist with the NHL Network and Sport Logic, Mike Kelly. How you doing, man? It's been a while. Where you been? You dumped us?
I'm doing well, thanks, buddy. I was traveling around a bit, seeing family over the holidays, and in New Jersey for the end of the World Juniors, and now I'm back home in Montreal. So all is good. How are you?
We're good. Let me ask you something as we look at the halfway mark and the trends that you see the first 41 games and the ones that you see in the second one. And I'm just asking you for a 60,000 view from high above on if trends and analytics tend to follow the first half to the second half, or do we see tighter, more meaningful games and guys kind of slip a little?
Good question. Year over year, you see usually at the start of the season, because it's the start of the year, and as players, you guys know that things can be a little squirrely in the first couple of weeks, results-wise and all that. And then at the end of the year, you see a little bit of the same as well, because a number of different reasons. Some teams are just out of it. They're playing young kids. Teams trade guys at the deadline and don't have the same rosters. So the middle section is where you tend to see kind of truer results as you go on. It's why you hear a lot of people say, wait 20 games to see what a team is. That 20 through 60 is probably the best indicator of half your season, 40 games-ish, of what a team might be. So, but things are starting to level out now. Obviously, this year goals continue to go up. Power plays continue to be unstoppable virtually. Goaltending is tough to find elite goalies. We've seen that trend for a couple of years. So that's kind of what you typically notice.
Mike, if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, you're looking at the division, you got Boston, Toronto, and Tampa Bay doing what they do yet again. Is there anything that you're seeing that any of these teams are they in a tightly knit sort of pack, or is Boston as far better as their points total looks, or is one of them worse than the three? Where do you have those three teams?
Yeah, I think the standings are, pretty good reflection. Boston to me is the cup favorite. They're number one. Like Linus Ullmark, you look at his record, is he 21, 1-1 or something? It's ridiculous. So the goaltending's been good. The team defense, like their blue line is fantastic. They're big, they're fast. They jump up into the play. Their forward group is terrific. They've had a great third line this year, in addition to what they do in the top six. I don't see where you're poking a lot of holes with that team. Tampa Bay, sluggish start, and again some injury issues, and they're starting to look more like Tampa Bay as the season goes on. And Toronto's been, they've been really good. But we've seen that story. So I was thinking about this earlier, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it already also. Like, it's halfway through the season. You can pretty much lock in Toronto and Tampa Bay in the first round, it looks like. So that's what everybody that's a Maple Leafs fan's waiting for, right?
Yep.
Doesn't really matter what they do. They could win 39 of the last 40, and they'd probably get first place if they did that. But you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter. It's like, get that playoff series started, and that's what it's about.
Yep.
Mike, I want to ask you about Austin Matthews and his pace right now for a 40-goal season, which is incredibly underwhelming when you come off a MVP 60-goal season. But for the most part, I think he did catch fire in the second half, if I'm not mistaken, that his numbers actually have not been that far off of what he did last season. But regardless, are there other aspects of what you can see the numbers to say that, yeah, it matches that he just doesn't look as dominant as he did last season?
There is, and it's not jump off the page alarming, but you're right. I mean, there are things that tend to be excellent indicators of how much a guy should be scoring, and you factor in their skill set as well, right? You can look at league averages, but you can also look at Austin Matthews possesses a shot unlike many players and is elite in terms of being a goal scorer. But last year he was right at the top of the league in things like expected goals, which I know you guys love so much talking about the models. But it factors in shot quality and really how much he should probably be scoring. Just a more general thing. So where are you getting your shots from? The slot, where 75% of goals come from, the inner slot, where half of them come from. Matthews dominated those areas last year. This year he's still very good. He's sixth in slot shots, but last year he was first. Inner slot, he's top 15 as well, but he was a little higher last year. So he's still a great shooter, a great scorer, gets a ton of chances, still on pace to score a lot of goals. But, I'm being around hockey your whole lives. You guys have probably heard this one too, right? There's a difference between a 50-goal scorer and a guy who scores 50 goals. I think there's a difference between a 60-goal scorer and a guy who scores 60. I don't know that anybody in the league is a 60-goal scorer where you can expect that every year. I think Austin scored 60, and you can bank on him getting 45 to 60 in any given year. This might just be closer to 45.
Looking around, I'm going to keep it with the Toronto Maple Leafs for one more question here. I'm curious about Morgan Riley, and he's a guy who we've talked about quite a bit on this show now. Starts making 7.5 next year, kind of a big ticket deal. It's a lot hinges on the Leafs, when you go up against great teams like Tampa and they got Hedman and Boston's got McAvoy or Lindholm or whoever you like as their number one. What do you make of Riley's season so far this season? I know he's been hurt. But it seems to me that they're struggling right now, or he's struggling a little bit and not quite having his best show.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. There were times in past seasons where for spurts, like it was a few years ago, I don't remember exactly which one, but his first kind of 20 games, I thought he was in the Norris conversation. Like, really good start. I think when he's playing at that kind of the top level that he can, you can kind of think of him as that true number one defenseman. But maybe overall he's not that. And I know Leaf fans have been talking about this a little bit this year as well with Riley, that maybe underperforming compared to what they've seen in the past or what they expect from him. So I do think that's fair. I still don't view him. You guys are just talking about stars and superstars, right? If Hedman's the kind of guy you're looking at as that's a number one defenseman, I don't think Morgan Riley's in that class, obviously. But can he be a good enough one on this team? I think he can. And you just look at, he missed time with injuries, and he's only played 26 games, I think, this season. So maybe that's some part of it, right, where he hasn't got that consistency in his game. But you look at what the Leafs have done defensively this season, it's they've been a good defensive team for a few years now, but this might be the best they've been defensively, and he's still a part of that. Guy who eats a lot of minutes, right?
Mike, we've had a lot of conversations in the last little while on Yarncroc playing with Tavares and Marner, and I'm just wondering now, when you see a guy like Yarncroc, and we know he was signed as a depth guy that can certainly jump up in the lineup if needed, But is there ever times that you look at a guy like Yarncroc, who for the most part is projected to be in your bottom six? Is there enough evidence analytically, statistically, that says that this guy now warrants top six positioning to even go to a Stanley Cup playoffs? Can you be talked into? Can I be talked into Yarncroc from what you can gather to be that guy that runs shotgun with Tavares and Marner in the playoffs?
Great question. The line's been good, and I'm real hesitant to give too much of that credit to Yarncroc. I mean, look at who he's playing with, and I don't want to take anything away from the guy. He's been fine there, but I look, kind of those things that you're talking about, Kyper, underneath, and he's not the guy driving the line. He's not the guy driving the chances. It's the other two. So what he is a pretty responsible player. He doesn't turn the puck over very much. There's good defensive parts to his game as well. But I definitely kind of think he's a byproduct, or that line's success has been a byproduct of Marner and Tavares almost entirely, more so than Yarncroc's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So it's not always easy playing with star players and playing in the top six. We've seen lots of star players struggle to find wingers to have chemistry with and players that they can be successful with. So I give him credit, certainly. But I don't view him as a top six guy. I think he's just in a great spot right now, and he's playing well with two really good players.
Mike, I want to get your thoughts on a couple other teams and if their spot in the standings is legit or not. The Winnipeg Jets, who we're going to talk about today, are second in the Central, first in terms of winning percentage, and the Florida Panthers are not good. Are those two teams, are they, is it fair that those teams are where they are in the standings?
I don't think it's fair for Florida.
You do?
Because I don't think it's fair for Florida. I think goaltending's really sunk them this year. And you know what? They haven't been great defensively. They've been kind of average, but they produce so much in terms of offense and chances and everything like that. And they're not scoring as much as they should either. So some of that blame can be laid there too, I guess. I don't know, a month or so ago, I said, I still think this team could compete certainly for a playoff spot, maybe even get into the top three. And the goaltending just hasn't come around. And you know what? I guess they could be better defensively. They haven't been. It's not killing them. They've been okay, but I think it's too late for them. I think they're missing the playoffs at this point, which is crazy to think considering last season. Winnipeg, I absolutely think is fair. I love what the Winnipeg Jets have done this year. There's not too much deviation between what they're creating offensively and what they're scoring. It seems sustainable to be kind of where they're at. And defensively, they're second in the league, I think, in goals against average. They've improved their team defense so much. I give so much credit to Rick Bowness, the coaching staff there, also to the players who seem to be buying in for the first time in a while. And I don't know why that wasn't happening with past coaching staffs and different rosters in previous years. Their team defense has been so much better. They're not getting caught running around in their own end and bleeding chances and defending all the time. That's been a huge noticeable improvement. So I think the Jets are legit. I think the Jets could not only, finish near or at the top of their division, but win a round or two and make some noise in the playoffs.
One more for me, Mike, and that was going into this week. Some excitement about the Buffalo Sabres maybe making a push here, and then they go lose to the Philadelphia Flyers. Come on. What is wrong with Buffalo here? Is it a foregone conclusion that we're dealing with the three in the East now?
I think so. I think we're dealing with the three in the Atlantic.
And then
five, yeah, and then 5 in the Metro.
Yeah.
And it's tough schedule-wise to get a 5 and 3. It doesn't happen a lot, but the Metro's so strong. And look, Buffalo, they're scoring 4 goals a game. I mean, that offense is absolutely electric. But I don't want to use the Philly game as an example because they were just really bad in that first period. They got outshot 16-5 and had some awful turnovers. But they're not a very strong defensive team, and they can get decent goaltending. But UPL there has been Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I butcher that every time, but Like that one was pretty clean.
Who could call you on it if you didn't get it right?
Yes.
Really,
Not me.
sounded good to us.
But yeah, no, Buffalo. Look, I think they still have a ways to go, and not too far maybe, but to really be a true competitor, we know they can score, but they struggle to defend still. And I'm with you. I think it's the 3 Atlantic teams and 5 in the Metro.
All right, Mike, the last one for me. Just want to, love reading your stuff and seeing you on camera whenever we can. What are you working on these days? What do you got your nose in for the analytics these days? Anything you're working on?
Good question. Nothing kind of big picture right now. Just doing a lot of kind of halfway through the season, looking around.
Yeah.
One thing that I just did for the NHL Network, and I guess if people want to see it, they can go to my Twitter account, was looking at just anomalies at the halfway point of the year, like things that just don't make a lot of sense. Mark Scheifele, he had, when I did this a few days ago, 9 assists and 23 goals. His playmaking stats were like top 10 in the league, just through the roof. And I start watching video. It's like guys missing the net, guys hitting the post. He's setting up all these great chances. So that's one that I think will correct itself, and he'll have a lot more assists with guys coming back. The other one, real quick, was Connor McDavid, and shocker to nobody, he's scoring a ton of goals off the rush this year. But he's actually scoring more than he really ever has. He scored last night his 17th goal off the rush, that great takeaway in the neutral zone. He's never scored more than 19 in a season, and he's halfway done this year. So, we talk about he scored 34. He could win the Rocket. He's never done that. He's never scored 50. How's he doing all these things? He's even better at the thing that he's already the best at, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Mike, always a pleasure having you on the show. Really appreciate your feedback.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, and enjoy the rest of it, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Mike Kelly.
Yeah, McDavid's going to have 50 goals like by February.
Yeah, and they may miss the playoffs.
Good point. What is that's tough look for Ken Holland. If Evander Kane meant that much to your season, that you lose one guy and you miss playoffs in a crap division.
It is great what Evander Kane brings you, but it's the blue line.
Blue line's awful.
Cody Ceci is not a top 2 defenseman in the National Hockey League.
Listening to Stauffer yesterday talking about how much they miss Duncan Keith is like, I guess they do, but it does remind you like how thin they were, that Keith was so important to them. They got Nurse and Ceci as a pair, Kulak and Barry as a pair, Broberg and Bouchard as a pair. Like no one defends particularly great in that group. Kulak, I guess.
I'm just hoping for the report this summer after they missed the playoffs, just from somebody's Twitter account.
McDavid's had enough.
McDavid, rumblings of Connor McDavid. Unhappy with the way the team is run.
Yeah.
Oh, give it to me.
Did we do Sheldon Keefe on McMahon? Did we play that already?
We did.
Yeah, we did that one.
I just totally.
Whatever.
He's such a remarkable guy.
If in fact JB's spider senses hold true here, and you don't see Matthews, we'll probably see Nylander play center.
Really? That'd be great. That would be wonderful. He did that in playoffs against Columbus.
Yeah, that's when Keefe was really getting tricky.
It was like Keefe's first year, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and
he got tricky.
Game 5, he put Tavares, Marner, and Matthews on a line.
Yeah, and he brought back Andreas Janssen, who hadn't played in 6 months.
I was on board with that
for Game
time.
5.
Yeah, Robertson was in.
Yes, and he was an infant at that point.
He was an infant.
Yes, he was.
Willie's playing center.
It was child labor at that point.
the lines are Bunting, Nylander, and Engvall. Yarncroc would stay with Tavares and Marner. Kerfoot, Kampf, and McMahon would play together.
And then Aston Reese, Holmberg, and Hunt.
Yeah. So what do you think? Nylander, Bunting, Engvall?
What?
What do you think of that line?
It doesn't make any sense to me. Like just in terms of, unless it truly is just a placeholder and Matthews definitely in. What would that line, when would you use that line? What's that line's purpose?
That's your second best line.
You do here.
Right? Tavares, Marner, and Yarncroc would play.
I guess you start them in the
number one
O-zone, Nylander, Bunting, and Engvall.
How do you not start Nylander?
You're right.
In the off,
I guess whatever line Nylander's on is starting in the offense.
A top 6 line.
Yeah.
Justice for our boy Holmberg. A center goes down and he doesn't get to go into the top 6. Come on. Let's see what he can do up there. Get him in there. Push for Pontus.
He has. There's been a bit of a slide, just a tad.
No. He's been
just
perfect.
a tad.
Perfect Pontus.
Kipper will never let us just put on the rose glasses and see, pretend someone's flawless, eh?
Yeah.
Not
just a slight. I don't mind him kind of pulling the reins in a little bit on Holmberg. You got 40 games to build this guy up to be an important guy.
He took a bad offensive zone penalty against the Flyers. Where he stuck his stick in a stupid spot.
The trip.
Yeah. That was the first mistake I've ever seen him make.
What would Aston Reese have to do to get out of the lineup?
There is not one thing he can do.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. Ken Wiebe is going to come by, Sportsnet contributor based out of Winnipeg. We're going to get in deep on Winnipeg, and we're giving love to the Winnipeg Jets because I did write them off at the beginning of the year.
The Leafs? Hey, anything better?
What's that clip?
From when they beat the Leafs, the Jets.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, nothing better than beating the Leafs.
I thought that was my clip out of my kitchen
Yelling at
years ago, yelling at my kid. Thank God that wasn't it. And then Brian Lawton is going to come by in the second hour, and we'll get into a deeper conversation on tanking for Bedard.
All right.
So much more. Meat on the bone. Real Kyper and Bourne back after these words.
This is Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
We're going to welcome Ken Wiebe momentarily, but I got to tell you, I'm really getting excited about our star or superstar conversation coming up a little later on in the show.
It's an important disclaimer. Which
All
are
right,
you?
Let's welcome in Ken. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time. And I got to be honest with you, since Sportsnet kind of brought you on and stopped ignoring the Winnipeg Jets, they've taken it to another level, man. They are fun to watch.
All because of you.
Oh yeah. So you're not blaming me for last year's struggles. That's
No.
good to know, Nikki. I appreciate that.
Starting now.
Since I was full time. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Rick, don't give the credit to Rick Bonus. Give it to me. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm there for it.
So when we look at the Winnipeg Jets now, what's the most noticeable thing that stands out on their success for you? Is it the man you just mentioned?
Yeah, Rick Bonus being able to get the buy-in, especially structurally, defensively. Obviously, they have one of the best goalies in the league in Connor Hellebuck, but as Mike Kelly said, they're not bleeding chances the way they did last year. The high danger chances, the grade A's were off the charts last year. This was a team that was very good offensively, but didn't care particularly much when they didn't have the puck. At least that's what it seemed like to the outside. Obviously, we've known they've had offensively gifted players for a long time, but Connor Hellebuck playing at an elite level. But this is a team that's more committed defensively. Their special teams have improved dramatically, and they got a top 5 penalty kill. And even though their power play was hindered by the fact that they had 7 guys out of the lineup, but I mean, this is a team that is much more committed without the puck. And Rick Bonus has just done a fabulous job of demanding accountability. And Nikki, you played on some teams. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you're ready to really be coached. And I think maybe that's what the Jets weren't rock bottom in terms of being 30th or 32nd, but they had some lofty expectations that weren't met. And I think they were a little bit more open to the suggestions that Rick Bonus had when he arrived on the scene here.
That's actually a natural transition to what I wanted to ask you about, which was Blake Wheeler and what his relationship is like with the team and his role on the team as someone who was stripped of the captaincy to start the season. It felt like there may be some conflict there, the big contract. Where are things at now with Wheeler and the team?
Yeah, Justin, I mean, Blake really handled this like a professional. Obviously, it would have been a big blow. I mean, this is a guy who took enormous pride in being the captain. I mean, he was one of the first Jets to buy a home in the community. I mean, he's been here all 12 seasons. Took enormous pride in wearing that C, but I think he's the kind of guy who put a little bit too much at times on his own shoulders. And I think that one of the things Rick found in terms of his conversations with other players is that they wanted to have a little bit more of a communal approach to the leadership. And having 3 alternates rather than one captain who had a very strong voice, I think has really helped. Blake, obviously, when he showed up on the scene, he said, if you think I'm just going to shrink into the background, you're sadly mistaken. And he's backed that up not only with words and leadership, but also in terms of his play on ice. I mean, prior to his gruesome injury, he was producing at nearly a point a game rate. And, and he's a guy who's provided, offense for a long time for this team. But I think his leadership has been really impressive this year on a team that has a bunch of young emerging guys who wanted to have a stronger voice. And those guys have done their part as well. But Blake Wheeler has done a nice job of handling what could have been an uncomfortable situation. And I mean, the other part too, Blake was very open about it before training camp when the announcement was made. Both sides, were open to a possible, breakup in the off season that didn't transpire. And, that didn't slip into his play either. I mean, he's a guy who's been very motivated and has done a really nice job on a number of levels. And it's allowed him, I feel like there's been a weight lifted from his shoulders a little bit. It just allowed him to go out and play hockey rather than worry about some of the other things. And, as a 35-year-old now, do I have to, worry about things other than playing? I think he's just going out and playing. And he's always been more of a lead by example kind of guy also. And, kudos to him for being able to handle that, in a professional manner and to be able to play at the level he has.
Ken, as far as the decision on the captaincy and overall how, a guy like Rick Bonus can allocate and empower people around him, it seems to be such a vast difference of maybe, first of all, coaching style between Paul Maurice and what the the players have been used to, and now Rick Bowness. And no question that Paul Maurice had a all-in buy-in on Blake Wheeler and what he meant to the team and how he gave him a chance to take control of that dressing room. And now Bowness comes in and kind of spreads it out. And even the sense that I get, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but, you know, when it comes to Rick Bowness, you mentioned the accountability, and he's certainly there to either kick you in the ass or maybe pat you on the back. But a lot of that stuff that is around the team maybe fall into the lap of Brad Lauer, Scott Arniel, who was a head coach. I mean, they're probably doing more coaching X's and O's than Bowness, and Bowness can just focus on, you know, the smaller details on maybe what ticks for some guys.
Yeah, I love that you use the word empower, Kyper. I mean, I think that's really something that's been very important. Like you said, I mean, the star players always felt empowered in the Paul Maurice era. I think that sometimes the players, the complementary players, maybe didn't always feel as big a part of it. That sort of not only holds to leadership, but ice time and responsibility. So I think that Rick's ability to get accountability, and I don't think for a second that Paul Maurice didn't want these guys to play better defensively, but Rick's ability to provide a bit of a striking critique, but doing it in a bit more of a caring manner, I think is something that, from talking to players, is something that really has hit home with them. Rick can be very cut and dried. He says he hates gray areas. That's one of the things Rick said on the first day of training camp. So, but at the same time, he's not, he's doing it from a position of the players know that they care, that he cares about them, that he only wants the best for them. And I think that's what's allowed them to want to be coached, to use a phrase Mark Scheifele has used. I mean, he said he wanted to be pushed and he wanted to be coached, and he's playing that way. I mean, Mike mentioned only, now he has 11 assists after having a couple the other night, but Mark's play has been at a really high level. I mean, would be the first time in 7 seasons he hasn't played at a point of a game rate. But a lot of people would make the argument Mark Scheifele is playing some of his best hockey. I mean, he's on pace for 46 to 49 goals. And the assist is not a matter of not setting up guys. It's been a matter of not converting. And a lot of those top 6 guys, like Nikolai Ehlers, only played 4 games this season. So I think that's impacted his numbers to a degree also, especially on the power play. But yeah, I mean, it's been impressive to see how the team has rallied around him. Now they had a little bit of a rough patch in December where they had 16 games in 30 days and they were missing a lot of key components, but they got through that 3-game losing skid and have won 5 in a row. And, I'm with Mike. I mean, this is a team that it's not smoke and mirrors. It's not a team that, analytically should crumble down the stretch. I mean, they should be getting better. I mean, they're getting healthier. Mm-hmm. And I think their best should be around the corner. And I mean, as Rick Bowness has said, structurally they've improved, but they're not at a Stanley Cup level yet, but they feel like they can grow into that during the second half of the season. So, looking at that division, they have taken advantage of some seasons from teams that I guess have we would call underwhelming. Minnesota, what do they have, 113 points last year? Doesn't seem like they're on that pace. Nashville's below expectations. Colorado, St. Louis. Like, would the Jets look at this team, at this division now and say, we should be serious buyers here? This may be an opportunity to make some hay. Yeah, Bourne, I mean, it's really super interesting. I mean, so their window is interesting. Scheifele, Wheeler, Hellebuck, and Dubois, depending on how that shakes down in the summertime, is only on the 1-year deal. But all 4 of those guys, potential UFAs in the same summer of 2024. So that would ramp up the urgency for a team like the Jets. Obviously, yes, the turnaround is welcome, but for them, depending on how they manage their assets, their widest part of the window might be now. So, and especially with what you've mentioned, it seems a little bit more open. It's a little bit like the Jays in the AL East, right? I mean, it seems like if the Red Sox are down, the Jays would be going for it. Same for the Jets. I mean, if some of these other teams are, I think another thing you guys mentioned with Mike, I think Boston's the only elite team in the NHL right now. I think there's a lot of very good to excellent teams, but I think there's really only one elite team. So if that's the case, that should lead teams like Dallas and Winnipeg to kind of push all your chips to the middle. I mean, what that looks like, I don't know, but if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I think you're swinging for a Bo Horvat type or maybe or more of an Arturi Lehkonen and a middle 6 guy that you can, I think Barbashev would be a perfect fit, a guy who can give you some offense but give you some edge. So I think that's probably where they'd be shopping. But I mean, the Jets have a lot of top 6 forwards, but if you're getting greedy, they probably would like another one. They could use some physicality on the bottom six and maybe even another defenseman. But I mean, that's a pretty hefty shopping list to be trying to outbid teams. And that's the thing that's interesting to me. There's so many teams that are in it, not as many sellers maybe as we suspected in the early going.
So we're all in agreement that it has to be this year. I mean, the names that you mentioned going into 2024, a market like Winnipeg, there's not a chance that you leave these assets to chance that they walk out the door for free. And we haven't even had a conversation on Pierre-Luc Dubois, who has told the whole world he doesn't want to be a Winnipeg Jet long term.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting too, Nick, right? I mean, 47 points now for Dubois, 19 goals. I mean, he's had an unbelievable start. So that's why I use Horvat as an example. I mean, so for me, he's almost Dubois insurance, because if they can't get Dubois in the summer to commit, maybe then you have to trade him like they did with Trouba. Then you give that money that you would have allocated to Dubois to Bo Horvat if you can convince him to stick around for, 8+ or whatever it takes. But, I mean, they're looking at trying to sign Hellebuyck. I would say he's probably the other. If they can't get Dubois signed, then Hellebuyck has to be the priority. But, yeah, I mean, it's just super interesting in terms of how quickly, things can change in terms of windows. I mean, the Jets thought their best window was 2018-19 after getting to the conference final, and we know how that worked out with some unexpected turn of events. So it's a fascinating time for them. And, I know your question you guys are coming up with it. I mean, is Kyle Connor a superstar? He's got the same number of goals as Austin Matthews, and he has the same number of points as Mitch Marner, right? So 20 and 49. He's a guy who had a tough start, only 2 goals in the first 13 games, but he's been red hot of late. So, coming off a 90 plus point season and trending for, potentially 85 to 90 again. So I'm very curious to see how the Jets handle this. I mean, we thought they'd make more changes in this past off season, but they stuck with their core, and their core has rewarded them. But I think they've also shown Kevin Cheveldayoff that they need another couple of pieces. I would expect them to kind of follow the Colorado Avalanche or the Tampa Bay Lightning model, where they're adding a couple of important forward pieces and maybe a depth piece on the back end if they can get one. But man, it's going to be the second half of the season should be fascinating to see how it unfolds.
The thing that caught my ear sort of listening to Mike and yourself talk about the Jets is the improved defensive part of it. Looking at that decor, Morrissey DeMello, Dylan Pionk, Heinola Schmidt, like that's a pretty good decor. It's a good group. What would they be looking to add to that?
Well, maybe 2, I guess. Brandon Dillon, with Sandberg being out for Heinola tonight, I mean, they don't have a ton of bite. They have guys that play hard, but they're not overly physical outside of Brandon Dillon. So I wonder if they want to, maybe if your 7th defenseman has a little bit more bite. Sandberg's done a really good job in terms of shot blocking and the penalty kill and all of that. So, like I said, I think that would be maybe on the greedy side if they're looking to add a defenseman, because I guess teams would always say they never have enough of them. So, but their ability to defend has been, much more solid with kind of an unheralded group, outside of Josh Morrissey's kind of Norris level season. I mean, there's a guy whose previous high was 37 points. He's already got 46 and counting at the midway point as they hit it tonight. I mean, he's really elevated. And that's the thing, Nick, we talked about empowering earlier. He went into his conversation with Josh Morrissey and basically said, hey, I want you in the top 10 Norris conversation by the end of the year. You have the green light to join. And he's done it in a manner that is, different than what we've seen in the past, where, the green light doesn't mean you're taking unnecessary risk. It's calculated risk. And they've also had the forwards covering off. But, I mean, Josh Morrissey's really been unlocked by Rick Bowness. And, his play has been another one of the reasons why the Jets are, first in points percentage. And, they'll send Rick Bowness to the All-Star game for the first time if they can, they can win tonight against the Detroit Red Wings. So it's been interesting to monitor on that front as well.
Ken, just one more for me. The hockey market in Winnipeg. I know after so many years of consistent sellouts, it's become a bit of an issue here coming out of the pandemic, and just the overall health of the Winnipeg Jets and the support. Or is there a slight concern about affordability in Winnipeg?
Yeah, Nick, I mean, it's definitely a concern. I would say that, they have rallied a little bit during the Christmas break here. I think they had 3 sellouts out of 4 games. So I think that was probably something that they would have considered a nice turn of events for sure. The team is obviously having more success than they did last year. So I think that's maybe a sign of maybe things to come in terms of the interest level still is pretty high. But I mean, for sure, I mean, it's something where the province was hit pretty hard by COVID. So there were a lot of people that, were hit, impacted financially. And they've seen that at the gate for sure. But that's another thing too. I'm with you. I'll be watching that closely during the second half. But I mean, this is an community that really rallied around bringing the Jets 2.0 version back in 2011, and I would think they would be doing that again. But I mean, what does a playoff run mean in that front too, right? That would be something where it's a lot easier to support a winning franchise, I guess. So yeah, like I said, I don't have the answers, but I do know that it was a couple of lean years on those fronts. But it looks like over the break there was a little bit of reason for momentum or optimism for the organization, I guess, in terms of the attendance. But yeah, I mean, it'll be something to definitely monitor during the second half and during a playoff push, provided the Jets can punch their ticket.
As we will be watching as well. Hey, Weeps, thanks for doing this, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Sportsnet contributor based in Winnipeg.
I enjoyed that.
I did too. Yeah. Just I'm tired of your takes with the Leafs. To
I
be
know.
honest with
Someone
you.
tell me about the Jets. I don't know enough about the Jets. That was great.
They have to go for it this year. And then they're going to have to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois in the offseason.
You don't think it's one of those things like Jake DeBrusk where he's like, I want out, and then it turns out the team's good and they get a new coach and he goes, I'm not so sure anymore.
Nope.
Oh. No?
Nope.
Do you want to think about
It's not
that?
even a no.
No.
It's a nope.
You just think that's a guy who just wants to be somewhere else on the earth. Mostly.
How's he going to look in Montreal?
Oh, really?
Oh, come on. Read the tea leaves.
He's an RFA, though, after this year, correct?
Yeah, but a free agent, unrestricted after that.
Yeah. So he'd have the one more year, so they sign him to a one-year deal.
He's Austin Matthews.
So I guess if you're Winnipeg, you say...
What?
I just ignored that. I ignored that, eh? Like I was just going to carry on.
I'm the fish who bit the hook.
Did you hear that sound he made when I said, like Austin Matthews?
Yeah, it was his diaphragm constricting.
It's like you lost your breakfast
There's
from
some
the other end.
There's some guy that tweets me every day that's like, what are you doing behind it? Banging on a drum, hitting your pen. Like he's pissed off about the sounds I'm making. So hopefully he's not too pissed about that sound that I just made.
This is not a conversation on Austin Matthews.
Oh,
I was just
okay.
referring
Are you sure?
that he has a similar situation, except he showed his cards.
What are his cards?
He wants to leave.
Who?
Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Oh, okay. Good. Yes, he wants to leave. He did show his cards. He flipped him over on the table and said,
Yes.
I got pocket rockets, boys.
Which, again, it's remarkable that they can just go about their business, win. He's having a career year, Pierre-Luc Dubois. And
Don't
knowing
think they're doing Kawine and Dine in
out.
Winnipeg to keep him if he's that disgruntled.
Think about what life would be like if Austin did the same thing Pierre-Luc Dubois did in Winnipeg.
Oh, it's so true.
Think about the world there.
Winnipeg,
Sammy, would you even show up to work
I don't even know.
every day?
Yeah, I like this job. I like you guys. I like seeing
you
every
would
day. I
turn
show up.
every day on
I'm
Matthews
thrilled.
and be like, we're so sorry. Come back, Matthews. We'll sign. And then you actually be like, forget him. Who cares anyway?
Would there ever be a world you could see where the Leafs could
just play it out a year?
Yeah, or just have success like Winnipeg was having if Austin did the same thing Pierre-Luc Dubois did?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I think this town would be upside down.
Our show would suck because it's all we would talk about. It'd be a bad.
I mean, it's
show.
kind of all we talk about now, anyway.
We haven't talked about it in a month.
What athlete has ever showed his cards like that? I don't know. I mean, Sammy, you might know in football or baseball or whatever, but and he's another guy we can go star or superstar. I mean, he's a good player. He's at times
Connor
a
Bedard
very
playing
good player.
with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois is a center, though, isn't he?
He's a center.
So
At what,
he could be a 2C.
What is he, 6'5"?
So if you're Winnipeg, you want to sign Dubois to a 8-year contract so that you can trade him to Montreal.
No, you don't even get to do that. You can just trade him. What do you? He doesn't need to sign an 8-year deal.
So this offseason, Dubois.
They can do a sign and trade for him to get the extra 8-year.
Right.
But you certainly don't want to go into next season knowing that if you don't trade him, he's leaving anyways for nothing.
So you'd rather trade him preseason than
Well,
sign him for 1 year and try to.
Yeah, and I think if Winnipeg sucked this year, we'd be having Bo Horvath conversations with Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Right.
It's hilarious listening to Weedman. I really like that interview too. It's nice to hear
Yeah.
a different team, but every market that's good has the same conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He's like, Horvat maybe and a defensive,
Yes.
a gritty defenseman.
How about everyone wants the guy who's just under the radar? He's like, Barbashev would be perfect.
We
said the same thing. The
we had a
Oilers have said the same
15-minute
thing.
Barbashev conversation last week.
I actually was thinking about it. I was like, Barbashev might have the most value on the market. Everyone thinks they're going after a tier 2, the guy who's at the top of tier 2.
Oh, they get a first for Barbashev.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Which is crazy to think about. You think they get a first, Kip?
For Barbashev? Guy had 24 goals last year.
Yes. Yeah. What did Montreal get for Colorado for Lehkonen? A second and a fourth, or second
And
and
a
a third?
player, right?
Yeah.
I like Lehkonen.
They got Barron.
I'd love that.
Well, and
for Colorado.
Lehkonen, he wasn't a rental either, though.
No, didn't they re-sign him? He was a rental.
Oh, he was a rental.
and,
You're
then
right.
and then they re-signed him.
Yeah, you're right. You're
Big
right.
deal, too.
Mm-hmm.
You know who else is underrated right now in Winnipeg? And we mentioned him, just Brendan Dillon. That guy's voice
It's a good singer.
it became more powerful in
real
that
Matt
room
Lashoff.
when they started spreading out the leadership.
Interesting. I can relate to being in a dressing room where it's like everyone would be better off if that guy over there would just maybe dial it back a bit. Like, this isn't your team, one guy.
Blake Wheeler was that guy in Winnipeg.
That seems like it, right? Where I'm sure everyone did their interviews with Bonus and was like, everything's great here. It's great. Well, can you tell Blake to just relax?
It must have that conversation must have been really strong for them to make that decision to strip him of his captaincy.
Yeah. And of course, they would frame it to Wheeler as, we want less pressure on you. We want you to not have to be a coach presence. We want you just to play. And, to Weeb's point, he's almost a point per game guy. He's been pretty good for him statistically. Can't say I've watched him super close, but seems like things are working out for the Jets. So sometimes addition by a little bit of subtraction in terms of effort on his part in the room.
Okay, let's take a quick break here because we're going to bring back Brian Lawton.
Lots.
We got lots with lots after the break. Nick Kypreos, Justin Bourne, Sammy McKee. Back after these words.
From the City News 680 Traffic Center.
is Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
We're going to welcome in Brian Lawton, guy that's done it all. Played, agent, general manager,
I would say he's qualified to weigh in on the sport. I would
analyst. Let's bring in Brian Lawton. Lots, where are you right now? You're just all over the world.
I am in wonderful Minnesota, looking at a very frozen lake, as you can imagine. Very similar weather to Toronto, a little bit colder, obviously.
Nice. I want to start with the back half of the season and the approach. Let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and knowing that you've got 40-plus games to prepare for the Tampa Bay Lightning. How does that change the mindset from here on in? Micro or macro managing here?
Well, certainly from a macro standpoint, you always want to have an eye as to who you will potentially meet to start the playoffs. I always think that's the most dangerous round for anybody. You know, you're not quite into it yet, and surprises can happen. But if I were Toronto, I'd be looking at ways that I think I can consistently beat the Lightning. It's not an easy task, as we all know. They continue to kind of defy the odds, losing good players, but they continue to put together a good squad year in and year out.
Looking at the deadline here for the Leafs, one of the teams that comes up that has available players, Arizona Coyotes. The Leafs trade with them regularly, and I wanted to get your take on regular trade partners. And you know, what's the deal with the Leafs trading so much with one team in particular? Is it just a relationship between the GMs? Is it coincidence, circumstance? How does that come to play out, and is it a good thing?
I think relationships play a big part in it. People you're comfortable with. You know, when you look at Arizona, I think you guys are bang on. Just by chance, I can't think of anybody. Maybe Anaheim's about the same. I just did this exercise the other day. You know, when you're managing a club, you always want to, particularly this year, I believe, because I'm not sure it's a great seller's market. But in terms of the buyer's perspective, I think you want to be prepared to pay top dollar for a player or top assets for a player. But you'd also like to try to sneak another player or two out of there. When you say Arizona, everybody thinks Chychrun. Well, there are guys like Nick Bjugstad that's having a pretty good year at a real affordable salary. There are guys like Travis Boyd that aren't that expensive, that are pretty good players. Toronto's already gone the Nick Ritchie route, so that's probably not a fit for them. But they're a team with a number of guys potentially that could be in play. And someone's going to have to pay such a boatload for Chychrun at the end of the day that I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody maybe try to grab another player or two on the way out the door.
All this talk about generational player Connor Bedard being available, and it's fairly obvious to all of us the teams that will tank, and you know, whether it's Arizona or Chicago, Montreal, the talk has been followed them right from the beginning of the season. And then there's other teams, like we'll see the one against the Leafs tomorrow night, like the Nashville Predators, where you think that there's every reason why they should bottom out and start again, but they seem to have that kind of that concept that we're going to cheat death here, and we're not going to have to go through that, and we'll get good again. I think the Rangers kind of went through that for a short period, about 2 or 3 years, and they seem to be okay. But can a team like Nashville actually delay the inevitable to the point where they can compete for a Stanley Cup without bottoming out?
Well, I think you're really smart to focus on them. I mean, you know, you make a good point, Kyper. The teams that look like they're going to be in the running, and Philadelphia's played a little better lately, but Anaheim, Arizona, Chicago, Columbus, Montreal, Philadelphia, San Jose, you know, those teams look like they'll be in the running for Connor Bedard. Don't forget, there really are 4 pretty good players in this draft, not at the level of Bedard, but it's a pretty good draft on the high end. And then you get into that second tier group of players. And I look at this almost every 2 weeks, and it changes all the time. I'm looking at an old ranking I did not too long ago. I had Buffalo, Detroit, and Nashville, as well as Ottawa, St. Louis, and Vancouver, as another grouping of teams that could potentially fall into that mix. Nashville is a team to me that has started to play much better lately. They'd like to think they could go on a run as we're at the halfway point. But if that doesn't materialize, I wouldn't be surprised to see them consider moving a player or two now. I mean, they just got Ryan McDonough in. Would you move Mac? He'd be awfully highly sought after. There's just a lot to unpack this year. I think it's going to be a really unique year. I think some of these non-traditional teams that you see in that mix are going to change it up. And ultimately, I think there'll be so many teams this year that are so interested in what's going on with Connor Bedard. It probably won't be a great seller's market when you add it all up.
Lots for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are decidedly not tanking for Connor Bedard. They have all their hopes pinned on Ilya Samsonov and Matt Murray. If you were the GM, what would you be thinking at this point of the season? Both guys have played 16 games and are .916 save percentages. Are you comfortable going into the postseason with your job on the line with those two guys as your goalies?
I don't think you could ever be fully comfortable in that position under the scenario that you're describing. However, I do think it's a tall ask to try to change that up at this stage. Who's really out there that would be a decided upgrade?
Right.
John Gibson, I guess, you guys could embarrass me and say, well, John Gibson, maybe. But boy, that'd be tough to fit under their cap. I'm not saying they couldn't do it. As a matter of fact, I'm more convinced you can do more than we've been led to believe over the last 10 or 15 years with regard to the salary cap. If you really are willing to acquire players that are going to extend your cap and do things that maybe we weren't willing to do 15 years ago. So there may be a path to that, but that doesn't speak to what the return would have to be to pry a guy like Gibson out of Anaheim, a guy who, quite frankly, hasn't really even played that great, doesn't have better numbers than either of Toronto's current goaltenders, but you have to think maybe in a different circumstance with a little stronger team in front of him, his numbers would be significantly different. But I don't think that's a likely outcome for Toronto right now, and I don't think it sits all that well with management. You can only do so much, though.
We're talking to former player, agent, general manager Brian Lawton. Lots. It's just kind of Deadsville out there when it comes to teams moving anybody. Is this absolutely the flat cap, and will this continue until a couple of weeks, as far as they can alleviate cap space for their respective clubs here?
When you talk to guys, prices are still sky high. You go out and you kind of canvass what's going on with a guy like Chychrun that's been highly sought after for quite a while, dragged on much longer than the Ryan O'Reilly Odyssey. And, you have to wonder how that one's going to end. I just don't see, teams willing to pay maybe a legitimate player, 2 first-round picks, a prospect, that type of return for anybody. I think it's going to be a buyer's market. And why do I say that? Well, I know Chychrun's out there. I know he's a guy that could potentially be traded, but, Erik Karlsson, is he off the market? We know he's super expensive. Would San Jose pay half for a great return? Would that make sense for them? Would Florida look at maybe moving Montour? Is Cam Fowler potentially in play? I know he's got a lot of restrictions on his deal. We heard about Provorov's name pop up, McDonough, Sherratt, Klingberg, Alvarez, Larson, Gavrikov, Leddy.
Could get flooded.
There's a lot of guys. Exactly, and that's my point. This Connor Bedard, let's try to be there at the end of the day, has kind of changed the mix this year, and I think it's going to affect the trade market. And I think right now the teams that want to be sellers, because there's a lot of them that have already come to the conclusion might be better to sell earlier rather than later this year to improve our odds. are having a very hard time getting anywhere near the returns that they would like to get.
Well, that's encouraging if you're buying, I suppose. One of the teams
should be.
Yeah, in theory.
Look at last year. Look at last year. We had just a little bit of this dynamic, and a guy by the name of Hampus Lindholm goes off for a price that a lot of teams have said, "Well, I'll do that for a quality player,"
right?
Because it's just worked out so great for Boston.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are on the hunt for, and I think it's going to be even tougher sledding. Clearly, in that situation, the club had made the decision that they're going to move on from the player. He was going to be unrestricted, but under, virtually no circumstance were they not going to move him. And that's what happened, and that's what has to concern a lot of teams right now.
But there wasn't much push on Lindholm. Maybe because the majority of the team slept on him or don't really watch games late at night. But there wasn't that much competition for the Boston Bruins for Lindholm. And I know teams today that would gladly want to revisit that based on the success that he's had in Boston.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Kyper. And I was with you last year when that was going on. I was like, my goodness. What is going on here? You have a chance to not just add a top 4 D, but in Boston's case, he really is a number 2 D. He's a guy that didn't have a ton of offense. He's already virtually at his career high in half the season. Teams sit there and do those calculations. Hey, this guy's not performing well on this club, but their club's not doing very well on our club with a better room, with a better supporting cast. This guy could really light it up. Well, it's been a perfect storm in Boston for Lindholm. Getting David Krejci back, of course, didn't hurt either, fellas.
Right. Yeah, that was a big difference for them. The Toronto Maple Leafs, when they're assessing how to spend their assets and what they want to do to the team, one of the questions I think they have, and I think Kip would agree, is just, do they want to get more physical? Are they tough enough? Are they whatever? I wonder if you think that NHL playing style, the way the game is played, has changed enough that you can have success without that element. Because in the regular season, it seems like you can. I just don't know once you get in the postseason if you can.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Tampa and Colorado have been able to defy that, but they have such extreme talent that maybe they get a pass on it. I watch a team like Edmonton, play a team like Minnesota, even St. Louis to some degree, Washington, teams that are big, heavy teams, and they seem to have an upper hand, certainly in the 5-on-5 play when you see those teams match up. That's interesting to me. In the East, for Toronto, could they get by without it? I think the numbers give them at least a 50-50 chance of that. But in a perfect world, you'd much rather have the same team that's much bigger, heavier. It don't have to be tougher. It's not tougher in today's world. It's just big players that could move. I think that's really valuable. And maybe at the end of the day, Toronto does go shopping for some bigger players. We'll see how that plays out. It wouldn't be the be-all, end-all for me, but it's certainly something you keep an eye on.
We just had a really good conversation on the Winnipeg Jets, and we talked about a lot of things, including short and term and long term for Kevin Cheveldayoff. But he's really in a bit of a pickle here because he's got a team that has shown that they can compete, but you don't know who's going to stick around in the next 2 years. Scheifele, Hellebuck need new contracts. How far and how deep do you want to go on there? And then you got this unique situation in Pierre-Luc Dubois where, we're bordering on star, superstar. I don't know what he's worth on the open market, but he doesn't want to stay. I thought this would be one of those things that could sink an organization, a huge distraction. That's not the case. Couple of questions here on this is, number one is, would you want to be in Kevin Cheveldayoff's spot right now? And two is, will we see more players like Pierre-Luc Dubois show their cards and not worry about the ramifications of a community turning on you?
I don't think we will, Kyper, for the obvious reasons. I just don't think there's any reason to go that route. Some players don't care, but that's more rare than not. Hockey players in general are pretty courteous, pretty thoughtful about those types of things. His situation is unique. I mean, keep in mind he is going to be a free agent, but he's not an unrestricted free agent. at the end of this year, not at 24 years old. I
but
think
2 years he will be.
No, yeah, 2 years he will be, assuming, you work out a 1-year deal or he goes to ARB, whatever, and you can't get longer than that. So it could be a conundrum, but it's not one that I'd be overly worried about right now if I were Kevin Cheveldayoff. Another year is an eternity in this business to move a guy. That doesn't mean you wouldn't be looking. As a matter of fact, I would start the process now. I'd do it quietly. I'd be looking for a grand slam offer. I probably wouldn't expect to get it, but you always want to see if someone will knock your socks off. You never know.
Lots, they spend a lot of my time looking at the Leafs in their division. The Florida Panthers have been object of many question marks this season about their success. Matthew Tkachuk's got 49 points in 38 games.
He ain't the problem.
He's been everything they thought he might be. So they get what they want, and they're so much worse. If you're Bill Zito, how are you feeling about the way this season is shaked out? I don't know the word. You know the word.
The word is ugly.
All right.
Yes, you're right.
No, it clearly is. And, it happens to everybody in this business. Bill Zito came in and absolutely everything he did worked out marvelously. And they went on an incredible run, and they even put up a bit more of a fight than maybe even some people thought they might last year in the playoffs. Didn't get to where they wanted to get to. Thought they'd go in all in this year with a huge move for Matthew Tkachuk, who you guys are right. I don't know if he has any better to give. He is 25 years old, so that certainly makes sense. But, he's played really, really well. I think what we found out is that it was razor thin in terms of the blue line that they were able to roll out last year and have such great success with. They've changed the coach. Everything has kind of gone south for them this year, very shockingly. And Kyper, as you wrote about not that long ago in the Toronto Star, it's even worse than the standings are on paper behind the scenes. So it's a tough spot for them to be in right now. Obviously, at the halfway point, they're hoping they can turn it around. I watch a lot of their games. I haven't seen anything to indicate they're ready to break out and do that.
If they just had a chance at Connor Bedard, but they don't even have that.
Ugh.
And they don't have first rounders for the next few years. Lots it's kind of it's mind-boggling to think that they went from President's Trophy to this scenario in less than 12 months.
No, it is, Kyper, and I read your story, and that's what I was alluding to, obviously. But that's just something that obviously Bill Zito and his management team never thought was a possibility, and neither would you or I have.
Yeah, that's fair.
Of course, at the same time, it is something that you can clean up with one more sentence. It just happens sometimes, that's all.
Well, plenty left to watch as we go into the back half of the season. Hey, Lots, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Anytime, guys.
Thanks,
Great to catch
Lots.
up with you.
Appreciate it.
Brian Lawton.
Matthew Tkachuk is 9th in the NHL in points this year. Tied for 8th, actually. 1.29 points per game, 20 goals.
I think it was Mike Kelly that emphasized the goaltending.
Spencer Knight and Sergei Bobrovsky. But Spencer Knight to turn around, sign a new contract at $4.5 million based on really nothing except if I ask for it, will you give it to me? This is the same thing that happens with not quite Tage Thompson, but betting on guys before they have the breakout. You go, we'll get him at 4 or 5. He's going to be worth 10. We're going to look like geniuses. And he's worth 2. And
you are if you would have gotten rid of your $10 million anchor.
How's that possible?
Okay, as promised, we were going to start this little star or superstar segment in our show. I love it when we just make crap up.
Impromptu segment here. Defining
All right.
what a superstar is.
Exactly. So before we get into this, and we'll go right here, home here in Toronto with the Toronto Maple Leafs, your definition between a star and superstar.
Well, I think you have to look at the number of people you're including. Like how is 10 players in the league superstars? Are there 15 superstars? To me, once you get to every team, you're at 32 teams. Those are now all stars. You have selected a star from all the teams. Those are all stars. You are out of the superstar realm. To me, the absolute cap is under 20, probably 15. How am I doing for defining what a superstar is?
Yeah. I think, first of all, is there a big gap between a star and a superstar for you? And what is that gap?
Yes. The gap for me is the guys who really drive the bus. There are stars on bad teams. Connor McDavid does not allow the Oilers to be as bad as they have been for years because he is a super uber duper star.
Yeah. Okay. So if I can kind of grasp what you're saying, that if we were to break it up between star and superstar, as simple as there's a local feel for every community that they have their own stars, right? Yeah. And it might be 3 or 4 on each team where they can look at their team and say, well, he's one of our stars.
Would people say that Riley's a star defenseman? Probably.
So when I think of a superstar, I think of national.
Okay.
I think of across the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think of marketability.
That's exactly what
on a superstar.
Marketability was in your definition as well?
Marketability.
So Jason Robertson,
and
third in the league in scoring or fourth or whatever.
And market plays into it big time, like Kyper said. Like,
so
if you mentioned Mika Zibanejad, to me, him playing for the Rangers makes him closer to a superstar than I would say if he played for the Kings.
A superstar for me is knowing that a team's coming into your community, and that guy is must see
selling
for me.
tickets.
Selling
Again,
tickets.
Jason Robertson, no disrespect, not selling tickets.
Not a superstar.
So the other
statistically,
the other factor is, there's a proven kind of commodity here that you've done it before or that you've hit levels that there's not a I'm waiting for moment with a star.
Yeah.
Right? A superstar has that arrived, and can he do it again?
Or just the confidence that he will because he's
opposed to a star who's you're waiting for to do that. So all of these factors come into play, and therefore
I think there's like under 10.
Let's go.
Under 10 superstars. You'd be surprised. So I've had this conversation with people when they say, he's one of the 5 best or 10 best players in the league. And then you start to write them down and you run out of names really fast.
So don't kill me, Oilers Twitter and Oilers people. But would you consider Leon Draisaitl a superstar?
Superstar.
Kyper?
Absolute superstar.
Superstar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's not the flashiest. There isn't a dynamic element to his game that is as clear as McDavid's, but
you get a billion points a ton of years in a row.
His ability to pass the puck, shoot the puck, all of that has put him in the last 2 years.
Here's one for you. Erik Karlsson.
Superstar.
So that is almost a legacy superstar.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like he's been at the top of the game, multiple Norris trophies, does stuff no one can do. You want to watch him.
The level that he hits when he's healthy and feeling good, superstar.
But having Karlsson in the conversation now, the bubble's pretty big.
Okay. So you said 12 or 20? What did you say?
I said under 20. So 15, 16, 17 guys.
Yeah.
Jack Hughes.
I'm in that same pot.
Jack Hughes is a great question. And Jack Hughes is like Tage Thompson to me.
Not superstars.
Yeah, where you're like, they're probably going to be. They are performing like superstars right this moment.
But I'm not putting those guys in the same conversation with Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. Like
Sidney
to me,
Crosby.
He's rising stars, new category.
It's a good vote.
Young stars.
But not superstars.
Young
we
star.
should put them on a team and have them play the rest of the world in a tournament.
But he's played 40 games. He's on a career year pace. Jack Hughes.
Hughes, okay.
That he looks like he's a projected superstar.
Yeah.
But he is not a superstar in the National Hockey League just yet.
So let's just do this quick.
Matthew Tkachuk.
Hold on. Okay. Let's do this quick. That's a great one.
Thank you.
Crosby, Ovi, McDavid, Draisaitl. Give me the
Matthews.
Matthews, Marner. Okay, D, like Hedman.
Makar.
McKinnon.
We're forgetting people.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like you're almost at 10 before we even start the
Stamkos.
Kucherov.
Kucherov's a superstar.
But you don't think Stamkos is?
I would put him in his last 3 years. He to me is a. But
here's then what about Bergeron and Marchand?
But to me they're. I don't know. I just don't think of them as superstars. I just don't think of them as superstars. I don't know.
There's a flash dynamic to a superstar.
Agree.
They are.
I don't disagree.
In my book, like I love Patrice Bergeron.
I know you take him over some of these guys.
There's not too many guys I would rather have in a game 7 than him.
Marchand.
So
Bergeron.
yes, but without the flash, Stamkos, Marchand, and Patrice Bergeron are superstars in our league.
Yeah, they are. They're huge names. We put Carlson on the list already.
Kirill Kaprizov.
That's a great one about.
Yeah, not yet.
I think it's market driven
because local star.
Like if he's in
so
Toronto,
good.
it's a
he's
no-brainer
having a
superstar.
sick year.
Yeah,
he's so good.
Yeah, he can, under the right circumstances, turn himself into a Kucherov maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair.
Let me go back to Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, star.
Superstar?
Star.
Jack Eichel.
Star.
I'd go superstar.
One of the stars.
I'd go superstar.
Eichel is
still a lot to prove to me.
He's a lot of word of mouth and expectation and has he done it? Has he done it? So Nylander's not going in then. He's not superstar status.
Yeah, no. He needs a.
But in terms of flash and market, he has those with him.
He needs. Oh yeah, the potential.
Yeah.
We got 50 guys with the potential to be a superstar.
Yeah. Evgeny Malkin.
Superstar.
Superstar.
Okay.
101st best player all time.
My favorite joke couldn't beat out New Zealand Loan.
New Zealand Loan from the 1912 Seattle Frankfurters.
Yeah, I think Roman Josi on a bigger market would be a superstar.
Yeah. I would love for listen. Some local market's going to catch wind of this conversation and hate us.
I think we've named them all.
No, did you guys name one of your top 5 players of all time, Braden Point?
Yeah, I thought about Point, but he's not a superstar for me.
Oh, yeah, goalies.
For goalies, Vasilevsky's a superstar.
What about Mark Stone? Sorry.
Mark Stone.
Best left winger in the game?
No.
Or at one time at least?
Not a superstar for me.
Vasilevsky, the only guy. Shesterkin, not a superstar yet.
Yeah, those two guys are superstars.
Shesterkin, you're going to put in.
For sure. He won the Vezina last year. He plays for the Rangers. He's a superstar.
How's he doing this year?
They're pretty good.
He is definitely their superstar in New York.
Yeah.
And would be the heir apparent to Vasilevsky. So I don't know. I mean, you can technically think that he's one of the superstars in the league.
Yeah.
In that position. All day long, you can sell me on that.
Elias Pettersson, David Pasternak.
Oh, yeah.
Pasta's in?
Yeah, I got him as a superstar.
So we got Pasta as a superstar, but not his teammates.
It's just a different thing. Like they're just.
I get
Kipper
it. I get
nailed
it.
it with
He's
the
got
flash.
The reflective glasses. You're instantly
with
a star.
The flash.
There's just a dynamic element to their game that automatically pushes you up into the wow factor. They're just great at the little things that help you win, but there's not that flash with certain players.
Barzal, Patrick Laine,
Pat Kane, superstar.
Kane, but he's a superstar, legacy superstar. He's still in the league.
Yeah, but we're at the tail end, right? But he was a superstar.
Yeah, it's a stretch having him in there.
No, not now.
No, he's out.
No, not
he's
now.
Out. He's outside he's on the outside looking into the superstar list.
Barkov?
No.
Barkov's a great question.
Barkov,
he's fallen off a cliff.
Fallen off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
last year, yes.
He was the most underrated player in the league. And then he
Landeskog, Rantanen,
Good players, not superstars.
O'Reilly. I'm almost done my quick scan of the league here.
I got one for you.
What's that?
Trevor Zegras.
See,
Young. He's in Jack.
he's just
Jack.
not quite good enough yet.
Jack Hughes. Right.
Just not
They're
quite good enough.
Yeah,
yet.
they're going to be the next wave, but more wins, less likes.
So we
on
have a
Instagram.
clean 15 superstars in the league, which I love as a number. You got Malkin, Kucherov, Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews, Marner, Hedman, Makar, McKinnon, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin,
Draisaitl.
Pasternak. I think he said him, and Kane, Patrick Kane. All right, hit us up in the comments. You got any
Petey in
sort of-
Vancouver, same guy, falls into
That's
that
a great
Jack
example
Hughes.
of your local market. Like Pedersen
Star.
is their guy, right? Where
He's the star in the local market, but just isn't right there nationally
Rasmus
yet.
Dahlin is probably getting there.
Tage Thompson getting there. Next
Yeah.
wave.
Yeah.
Adam Fox.
Oh, good one. He just hasn't been in enough car commercials. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't seen him anywhere.
I don't
He's
know.
good
One Norris.
enough to be there. One of Norris. He's in New York. He's legit. But
should be the next 10-year version of Erik Karlsson.
John Tavares? No.
No.
Love?
No. Is it
Johnny
crazy?
Gaudreau?
Is it crazy to think that has he ever been a superstar, John Tavares?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, I think JB's right that there was that window where he was the franchise of the New York Islanders.
There were guys, Jamie Benn was it, Claude Giroux was it. Like, those guys were the top of the league at
Tyler
times.
Sagan was
Yeah.
on the cusp of being a superstar.
Yeah.
Panarin?
It's a good one, but no.
He's a very poor man.
He's very
Pasternak
rich,
for
actually.
me.
No, he's the opposite of poor man.
Poor man Pasternak.
That's great.
Did you guys do Kyle Connor?
Kyle Connor, no.
Star player on his team.
You ask some fan bases in the league about Kyle Connor, they'd say, who's he
I'd
play for?
take him.
No,
Or
they wouldn't know where he is.
Kyle
like-
Connor and Gensel are the exact same to me. Right?
Yeah.
You'd love them riding shotgun with your number one centerman.
Yeah.
And know that they could score 35, 40 goals with their eyes closed, but not considered like flash superstars.
Which brings me to a conversation that we kind of had earlier about Anze Kopitar, who had his 1100th point.
Oh, Drew
last night.
Doughty.
Oh, Drew Doughty's a star.
He's not a
Superstar?
No.
Okay.
Drew Doughty's a superstar.
He hit
Norris's
he hit-
Stanley
he
Cups,
hit-
runs his mouth, plays
He
in
hit
LA.
high
Superstar.
levels. He hit high levels for me.
Is that a legacy?
You're writing down. You put that in the book. That's official.
He's
in ink?
official. Doughty's in.
Okay.
He's in my. He's in my.
That's
if
an
Erik
ink.
What are we at,
Karlsson's in, Drew
17?
Doughty's in.
17.
Yeah. It depends on where we sit on Taves. We never really.
Nah. I'm putting the foot down.
That is, I mean,
So
sacrilege
is
to
Brent
jump.
Burns still a superstar?
No.
Brent Burns is high entertainment value.
Oh yeah. Do we say anyone on Carolina?
I mean, Aho's
best
not
team
gonna
in the
get
league?
nod.
No.
Svechnikov?
Svechnikov's not going to do it.
No, not yet. Not yet.
All right. But what about Kopitar?
So Kopitar, I love as a discussion. Is he a Hall of Famer? 1,100 points in 1,250 games, ballpark. Those are round numbers.
Yes.
He is. He's in, like, for sure for me.
Yes.
I mean, he was a
Me too.
monumental piece. Won Selke trophies, Stanley Cups, almost a point per game guy. You want your player. You know what's funny is Sam said Austin Matthews when he came into the league, Kopitar was like a comparable for a lot of people. Like, he could be Kopitar. Turns out he's maybe Kopitar plus. But wouldn't you want him to have Kopitar's career? Wouldn't you love him to end with Kopitar's career?
I would run to the Scotiabank Arena and get down on a knee and pray to the hockey gods that he ends up with that career. Oh
like
my
Anze
God.
Kopitar
Yeah.
when it's all said and done.
The reason I brought it up is because if this guy had this career, like we're talking about the superstar conversation, if this guy had this career on the East Coast, like any of the big traditional hockey markets, you talk about, Montreal, Toronto, Philly, New York, any of these places where they really care about it.
Yeah.
The way this guy he'd be talked about as like an all-time legend.
I know.
And he's just
without a doubt, if he was in the East,
like
it would be a different conversation.
I feel like he deserves as like one of the biggest, most underrated careers. Like if you're having like a conversation about who would it be, I think he's in that conversation.
Yeah, he has been everything they've asked of him and more.
Forgot one here.
Oh, what do you got? I knew we definitely forgot a couple.
Marc-Andre Fleury.
No.
Big numbers, man.
Like he's a Hall of Fame guy
But
too.
if you're going by the
superstar,
marketability,
he's not a superstar in this league.
He's a superstar.
Yeah, he's a superstar.
This is the funny thing though. Like, is it just
you're
playing
right.
ability?
No,
Because
he
if
is.
it's not, then Jonathan Taves is a star.
Well,
a superstar.
Yeah, I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury would be under the same umbrella as Jonathan Taves, where today it's they're on the 18th hole here. We know that, but
pick it up.
Not pick it up.
That's a gimme. That's a gimme.
Yeah.
That's a gimme.
Yeah, it's a gimme. Go to the clubhouse and let's start drinking about your first 17 holes.
No one's going to talk about 18. Let's just focus on your great front side.
I think that's about it on the goaltending side. That's the one. Is Jonathan Quick a Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Superstar for LA?
No.
So you can lose superstar status while you're a player.
I think he's had too long of a downswing.
Yeah. Like if you're Gretzky and you get 9 goals in your last year, you're still a superstar. You don't, you can't dim a star that bright.
Yeah. But I guess did Quick win the Conn Smythe for them? Like there's a couple years there when he was out of this world.
You know what we've never discussed on this show, which we probably should have? They're putting up a statue of Dustin Brown.
Really?
In Los Angeles. Maybe not even there. Maybe it's already up. A statue of Dustin Brown, the captain of the 2 Stanley Cup teams. I believe he wore the C when they won the Cups.
He's a warrior, that guy.
But a statue of Dustin Brown?
He played almost
Wendell
1,300
Clark's got a statue.
Don't compare those two.
Why? They played hard. They were loved locally. Listen, I love Wendell.
I know.
I'm just telling you that's where it's coming from.
Okay.
Right?
Almost 1,300
Was Wendell
games.
Clark a superstar?
You'd know better than me.
I love him, but I mean, there's people around the league that would go, he was a really good player, a hard player, a tough player. Love him in the trenches, but a league superstar? It's all in the eye of the beholder, but I can kind of see the success of their Stanley Cups around a guy like Dustin Brown. And I know he's not a star.
Yeah. My thoughts are when you say that are, but the Leafs have never had a ton of like superstars league wide, but then that's LA too.
Like, did Dustin Brown make many All-Star games? Did he make a lot of national teams? I think he was part of USA, no?
For sure.
Forechecking champ.
Yeah, he would have been there in 2010 and 2014. 100%.
More
Statue to me is
workman-like
another
mentality.
Well,
it's also like the Leafs have Legends Row. That's where Wendell is, right?
Yeah.
If they built
LA has like Magic Johnson out front.
If they built one
He's
for
gonna
Brown
be by the Zamboni doors.
They got Magic in the basketball and Dustin Brown drinking a water bottle with the water squirting the
the
wrong
one for
way like that
Kopitar better be made out of solid gold if they've got one for Brown. But I like Brown. Brown had an underrated career, played almost 1,300
I have
games.
no problem with Dustin Brown as a player. He's
almost 100
he's
playoff
a
games.
statue.
Almost 100
They
playoff
take
games.
away his statue right now. I'm blaming you.
Statues are a higher honor than the Hall of Fame.
60 seconds.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either. There's some.
How many guys are in the Hall of Fame? A bajillion. There's like 9 guys with
Anybody can
statues.
order a statue. Anybody can order a
Put up a
statue.
Kypreos statue.
Not
at
everybody can
Sportsnet.
get into the Hall of Fame.
On the TV side, that's where the Kyper statue's
You
going.
can make a statue of me out front, right? Anybody can do that.
What do you want it out of? Bronze, iron, nickel? Just tin's good. Tin's good. You got aluminum foil?
Wow, this segment should have been on a Friday. All right. Our thanks to Ken Weep for our Winnipeg discussion. Yes. Brian Lawton and
Mike Kelly.
Mike Kelly, of course.
All day.
Okay. One more, and then we're back in action tomorrow night, Nashville, Toronto. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button. Give us a rating and review. Always love having you guys on board. Have a great night, everybody.
Tim's is bringing value with our Tim Selects breakfast options for under $3 plus tax. Dig in to sandwiches like our Simply Canadian Bacon made with naturally smoked bacon, Simply Sausage, and Everything Bagel with cream cheese. Delicious meets value for under $3 plus tax with Tim Selects. Terms and limitations apply.